Despite the disturbing environment, the village itself appeared disturbingly normal.
Those are our farmlands. That is where the villagers do their work.
Chu Lai pointed toward the horizon with a casual flick of his hand. Lin Yi watched as scores of people in tattered clothes worked the earth. They seemed cheerful, their voices carrying through the air as they toiled. Noticing their arrival, the workers paused to wave, their greetings marked by a frantic, unsettling eagerness. A passing villager came to a halt, his eyes darting between Lin Yi and Chu Lai in sheer disbelief.
Young Master Chu, who is this boy? The resemblance. It is uncanny.
Chu Lai let out a boisterous, carefree laugh as he prepared to make the introduction.
He is my brother, my own flesh and blood.
Lin Yi felt a surge of surprise. He had not expected Chu Lai to be so direct or so insistent. A shared face did not guarantee a shared history, yet Chu Lai seemed entirely unbothered by such logic. He announced the connection to everyone they passed, his voice vibrating with a feverish, almost manic joy.
Young Master Chu, you have returned!
A piercing, high-pitched voice rang out from the shadows behind them. A gaunt, misshapen figure emerged from a side path, his movements frantic and scuttling. He approached with a servile, oily grin, his stunted body encroaching uncomfortably on their personal space. He was mid-sentence when his eyes fixed upon Lin Yi, his expression freezing in place. The stranger's gaze flickered rapidly between Lin Yi and Chu Lai, mirroring the shock of the other villagers. Lin Yi, however, had long since ceased to be surprised by the reaction.
This is my brother. We share the same blood.
Chu Lai's voice was unwavering, his declaration brooking no argument.
1,000 congratulations, young Master Chu, to find a lost brother! What a blessing!
The man's lips pulled back in a grotesque smile, showcasing two massive yellowed front teeth that jutted out from his mouth.
Younger brother Chu, we meet for the first time. I go by the name Ashu.
He spoke with a greasy, unearned familiarity that felt distinct from the simple enthusiasm of the other villagers. Despite the lack of a prior connection, he behaved as if they were lifelong confidants.
My name is Lin Yi.
Lin Yi's correction was flat and immediate.
Ah, of course! I merely presumed siblings would carry the same name! Brother Mouse, tell me, have these past few days been comfortable for you?
The question piqued Lin Yi's interest instantly. If he was asking about recent days, then Ashu was a newcomer to the village. Lin Yi's thoughts began to whirl, analyzing the implications.
Comfortable? It has been more than that! I owe my life to you, young Master Chu. Had you not intervened, those monsters would have torn me apart. This place is a literal paradise. Food, water, safety. A wretch like me never dreamed of such a life. Gratitude is well and good, Brother Mouse, but do not let yourself grow idle. You must begin your work once you have found your footing. Has your designated plot of land been finalized yet? Indeed, indeed. I am no slacker. I will be out there tomorrow.
Ashu nodded with an almost violent vigor.
Excellent. Now move along. I must find lodgings for my brother and his companions.
Before departing, Ashu cast one final, lingering look at Lin Yi and his friends. His beady, inquisitive eyes swept over them with a predatory intensity. With one last display of those protruding teeth, he turned and scuttled off into the dim light.
He only joined us a few days ago.
Chu Lai noticed Lin Yi's lingering gaze on the scuttling figure of Ashu and offered a casual explanation.
We regularly dispatch patrols to safeguard the village and offer aid to those still struggling in the world above. I was leading one such patrol when I stumbled upon him. He was under siege by...
Chu Lai's voice trailed off, a momentary hesitation flickering in his eyes.
Brother, tell me, are you familiar with what we call freaks?
The question was jarring. They had avoided the topic during their journey, especially as Lin Yi's suspicions about the village's true nature deepened. Lin Yi was taken aback by Chu Lai's directness. He managed a slow, deliberate nod. To feign ignorance now would have seemed suspicious.
Ashu was being pursued by those things when I intervened. I managed to pull him back here, to safety. He's a decent man, quite lively. He has adjusted to our way of life with surprising speed. It's a lot to take in, I know. Leaving the world you knew, it's a profound shock. Some find it harder to adapt than others.
Chu Lai's words held a grain of truth. The initial sight of the cavern was undeniably breathtaking. But as the minutes turned into hours, a heavy, suffocating weight began to settle in the pit of Lin Yi's stomach. The bioluminescent glow above was a poor substitute for the sun. It was cold, sterile, and entirely devoid of warmth. The light was sickly and dim, casting the entire cavern into a perpetual state of twilight, like a day trapped forever beneath a leaden, storm-filled sky.
Let me secure a place for you all to rest. Once you have acclimated to the air here, you will begin to see the beauty of our sanctuary.
Chu Lai's smile was thin, almost practiced.
In time, you might find peace in the fields, or perhaps you will feel the call to join our patrols and rescue others from the darkness.
The subterranean air was heavy with moisture. To combat the pervasive dampness, the wooden cabins were elevated on high stilts, keeping them clear of the frigid, unyielding ground.
This cabin should suffice for now.
Chu Lai gestured toward the modest wooden structure as he led them inside. The living quarters were Spartan, furnished only with a basic table and a handful of beds. In this subterranean existence, the luxuries of the surface were nothing more than a distant memory.
Take some time to recover. I need to consult with Mother.
Chu Lai turned to depart, his movements brisk.
I will arrange for a meal to be brought to you shortly. In the meantime, I must insist that you remain here.
Brother, allow me to accompany you.
Lin Yi was driven by a gnawing curiosity about this mother figure Chu Lai spoke of so frequently. He needed to verify for himself whether she too was one of the monsters. The suggestion caused an immediate and violent shift in Chu Lai's demeanor. A dark cloud seemed to pass over his features, his gaze hardening with a sharp, undeniable flicker of anger. Lin Yi didn't miss the change. He pivoted instantly, his voice smooth and conciliatory.
On second thought, perhaps it is best if I stay. The journey has taken quite a toll on me. I feel the need for sleep.
At the mention of exhaustion, the darkness vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced once more by Chu Lai's easy, practiced smile.
A wise decision, brother. Sleep well. I shall return before you have even noticed I am gone.
Observing the sheer speed of Chu Lai's emotional reversals, Lin Yi felt a chilling certainty take root in his mind. Beneath the veneer of hospitality, something about this man was profoundly broken. Troubling as Lin Yi's thoughts were, they paled in comparison to the terrifying truth Chu Kai had unearthed. With Chu Lai finally absent, the two children huddled together on the rough bed, their initial vigilance eventually yielding to the heavy weight of exhaustion. They slumped into a restless, uneasy slumber. Chu Kai's eyes darted around the sparse room before he signaled for Lin Yi and Zhang Cheng to gather near. The cavernous space amplified every sound, making their whispers feel dangerously loud. Stealth was their only currency here. Lin Yi's mastery of his enhanced senses was still developing, far from the precision Chu Kai possessed. To ensure they weren't caught off guard later, they had taken turns maintaining their vigilance. As a result, only Chu Kai's senses were fully engaged during their brief encounter with the man named Ashu.
Think back to that man, Ashu.
Chu Kai's whisper was so faint it was almost swallowed by the damp air of the cabin.
I have been analyzing the pulse of every villager we have encountered so far. Their hearts, they beat just like ours, human. But Ashu, when he stepped out, there was nothing. A void in my perception.
Ashu had appeared from the shadows with a suddenness that should have been impossible. Even without sight, the mere sound of his breathing or the friction of his clothes should have betrayed him. To Chu Kai's refined hearing, the idea of someone approaching undetected was a statistical impossibility. Chu Kai's features were etched with a grim, wide-eyed terror as he spoke the final, crushing truth.
That man, Ashu, his chest is silent. He has no heartbeat.
So he's got no pulse?
Zhang Cheng stroked his chin, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. He took a second to weigh his thoughts before continuing.
If this Aishu really is heartless literally, then we've stumbled onto something fascinating. Think about all the villagers we've passed on the way.
Zhang Cheng began to break it down.
If he's the only outlier, we can probably dismiss the hair snail parasites. Usually those hosts still have some kind of internal rhythm. Then again, maybe a Shu is just another freak, a creature that doesn't need a heart to function, much like Ru Hua.
The logic was sound. Ru Hua only ever mimicked a heartbeat. It was a fabrication, not a vital sign.
But there's one more angle to consider.
A faint grin touched Zhang Cheng's lips as he pressed on.
What if a Shu is actually one of the God-chosen?
The powers of the God-chosen are unpredictable. It's entirely possible his gift is simply the ability to suppress his own physical presence. Lin Yi and Chu Kai exchanged looks. The theory about a hidden power seemed far more plausible. The memory was still fresh. A Shu had been practically invisible to their senses until the moment he opened his mouth.
Doesn't that just make him a bigger threat?
Chu Kai's face clouded over with concern.
How can you find something that deadly interesting?
It's dangerous, sure. But keep in mind what Chu Lai mentioned, A Shu is a newcomer to this village.
Zhang Cheng's smirk widened.
So what?
Chu Kai pressed him.
How does the timing of his arrival change the fact that he's a potential monster?
Zhang Cheng gave a slight shake of his head.
On its own, it doesn't. But his arrival might actually be the thing that keeps us safe.
Wait, are you suggesting...
Lin Yi paused, a realization dawning on him.
Did Chu Lai bring A Shu here on purpose?
Zhang Cheng gave a curt nod, his voice dropping to a whisper.
A Shu might be part of an entirely different faction, a third player on the board.
Regardless of whether A Shu was a monster or a chosen human, one thing was certain: his heart didn't make a sound. Chu Kai's ears didn't lie. A Shu was wearing a mask, hiding something deeper than his outward appearance. Escaping a monster's grasp is one thing, but settling in here with such composure is another. The lack of terror in his eyes was proof enough. This man was no stranger to the horrors of this world.
When you look at it from that perspective, doesn't it make you curious?
Zhang Cheng's voice trailed off as he considered the implications.
If a third faction has managed to slip in here, they're not here for a vacation. They've got an agenda. The real question is, what are they after?
Lin Yi's gaze drifted toward the window. Outside, the world was a bioluminescent dream, filled with glowing fungi and vibrant moss. It was stunning, but nothing that seemed worth such a high-stakes infiltration. There had to be a secret. Something buried beneath the beauty that they hadn't even begun to uncover.
If that's the case, should we reach out to A Shu ourselves?
Lin Yi looked to his companions for their thoughts.
My take is...
Zhang Cheng opened his mouth to reply, but Chu Kai's hand shot out, clamping firmly over his lips.
Wait, someone's approaching.
Chu Kai's voice was barely a breath, his eyes fixed on the door. The sound peaked just outside the threshold. A heartbeat later, the door creaked open, and two locals stepped inside, balancing heavy wooden trays.
Greetings to our guests.
The villagers offered broad, practiced smiles, their eyes bright with an unsettling warmth.
Young Master Chu didn't want you going hungry. He asked us to bring some local delicacies for you.
They stepped into the room, setting the trays down on the central table with a soft clatter. Lin Yi leaned in, his eyes widening. The trays were a display of the bizarre items unlike anything he'd ever encountered. Clusters of peculiar mushrooms sat in one corner, their caps still wet and shimmering with fresh droplets of water. Beside them lay unknown fruits, which released a scent that was deceptively sweet and inviting. But it was the center of the tray that held his attention. Piled high were ivory white objects that dominated the selection. They had the look of perfectly peeled eggs, their surfaces polished and gleaming with a smooth, unnatural luster. Each one was an elongated oval, roughly the size of a man's palm, and they lay there in a silent, pale heap.
What do we have here?
Lin Yi leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he inspected the items on the tray.
Some kind of fruit? They look unusual.
The villager gave a slow, deliberate shake of his head.
We call them egg fruit, though that's a bit of a misnomer. They aren't fruit at all. They're a specialty of our village. You won't find them anywhere else.
To demonstrate, the villager plucked one from the heap and brought it to his lips. The pale, plump object collapsed instantly, leaving nothing but a thin, shriveled membrane in his fingers.
Is it filled with juice?
Zhang Cheng moved closer. His scientific curiosity clearly piqued.
No, not juice.
The villager ran his tongue over his lips, a look of lingering hunger in his eyes.
The texture is more like a thin, silky porridge. The flavor is exquisite. It's incredibly dense in nutrients. It's the staple of our diet. We have it at every table. The trick is to bite a tiny opening in the casing and then draw the inside out quickly.
He gestured to the tray, continuing his tutorial.
It dissolves the moment it touches your tongue. It's a rare treat for those from the outside. You've been through so much. Your bodies must be depleted.
The second villager added, his smile widening to show too many teeth.
Please, don't hold back. Eat your fill and then find some rest. We can always bring more if you're still hungry.
While he spoke, his companion moved to the corner, gently waking the two children and showing them the ivory spheres. The kids didn't need a second invitation. Driven by raw hunger, they lunged for the trays and began devouring the contents before the villagers could even step away. Lin Yi felt a surge of alarm. He wanted to pull them back, to stop them from eating something so alien and unprocessed. But the children were too fast, and with the villagers' eyes fixed on him, he was forced to stand by and watch them swallow the unknown liquid.
And you three? Won't you join them?
The villager's gaze shifted back to Lin Yi, his expression unreadable.
In a little while, perhaps.
Lin Yi managed, his mind racing for a believable excuse.
I made a promise to my brother. I told him I'd wait until he returned so we could share our first meal together. We've been apart for a lifetime. I can't imagine eating without him now.
He kept his voice steady, projecting a sense of familial duty.
Our reunion is a momentous occasion. I want our first meal back together to be special.
Understandable.
The villager gave a polite nod, seemingly satisfied. After exchanging a few more empty pleasantries, the two men turned and exited the cabin.
What in the world are we looking at here?
Chu Kai reached into the tray, plucking one of the egg fruits from the pile. He gave it a tentative squeeze. The object was surprisingly yielding, a soft, squishy texture that felt almost inviting between his fingers. His attention shifted to the two children, who were still in the throes of their ravenous meal. They were devouring the spheres with a desperate intensity, oblivious to the thick ivory fluid that escaped their lips and stained their chins. Up close, the substance didn't resemble porridge at all. It was viscous and opaque, more like a heavy curdled yogurt. Zhang Cheng remained silent, his eyes locked on the tray as if he were decoding a complex puzzle. Suddenly, his hand flashed out, grabbing several spheres and arranging them in a precise, vertical line on the table. Lin Yi followed the movement, his heart dropping as the pattern became unmistakably clear. The realization hit him like a physical blow.
My God, these aren't fruit. They're eggs. Giant insect eggs.
Lin Yi could still see them in his mind, the flies he had once watched as they deposited their brood. A cluster of pale, elongated shapes looking disturbingly like common grains of rice, yet carrying a far more visceral weight. As Zhang Cheng began to arrange the so-called egg fruits on the table, that memory surged back to the surface, unbidden and unwelcome.
Don't touch that food.
Chu Kai looked toward the two children, who were already tearing into the meal with animalistic hunger. He moved to stop them, but Zhang Cheng reached out, catching his arm.
Leave them be.
Zhang Cheng shook his head, his expression unreadable in the dim light.
If these truly are insect eggs, they won't be fatal. It's just protein to them.
It was a revolting thought, but perhaps a necessary one in this sunless abyss. Yet Lin Yi was fixated on a different detail, the scale of it. What kind of creature could produce something of this size?
We haven't seen any massive insects since we got here, have we?
Chu Kai gave a slow, deliberate shake of his head.
Nothing. Only the glowing moss, the fungi, and the people themselves. Just their homes and those fields.
Zhang Cheng leaned in, his voice dropping to a barely audible whisper as he glanced toward the window.
We shouldn't look too closely at any of this. Chu Lai mentioned fields, but how can anything grow down here without a single ray of sunlight?
And if they aren't growing crops, then what exactly is being cultivated in that soil?
Lin Yi felt a chill run down his spine. He looked back at the egg fruit, imagining the dark earth outside.
What if the insects that laid these are buried right beneath our feet? What if the farming is just feeding them so they can produce more eggs?
Zhang Cheng nodded, the movement slow and heavy with implication.
It's possible. What we call strange is only a matter of perspective. To the people here, this is just their way of life. But more than the food, I wonder how any human can survive in such relentless dampness. Without the sun, the body eventually breaks down.
The bioluminescence was a poor substitute for the real thing. In this light, everyone looked like a ghost of their former selves. They were trapped in a world that allowed existence, but perhaps not life. The heavy silence of the cabin was shattered by a jarring, high-pitched voice from just outside the threshold.
Well, well, look at you all, enjoying a little feast.
They turned as one, their faces darkening. Standing in the doorway was a Shu, his presence as unwelcome as a sudden cold draft. Chu Kai narrowed his eyes, his senses straining. Once again, there was nothing, no heartbeat, no rhythm of breath, not even the scuff of a boot against the floor. The man moved with a silence that defied the laws of nature.
I arrived at just the right moment, didn't I?
A Shu was a different man than the one who had stood beside Chu Lai. The thin veneer of civility was gone, replaced by the swaggering arrogance of a common street thug. He strode into the room, his eyes fixed on the table. Without a word of warning, he reached out and slapped the fruit right out of the young boy's hand. A Shu snatched up one of the pale egg fruits, shoving it into his maw with a grotesque slurp before swallowing it in one go.
I'm starving, so I think I'll just help myself. I'm sure you kids don't mind sharing.
The boy glared at him, his small fists clenched in a fury he didn't dare act upon. Beside him, the timid girl simply vanished into thin air as A Shu leaned into her personal space. A Shu didn't even blink at her disappearance. He began frantically shoveling mushrooms and fruit from the tray into his pockets, his movements greedy and hurried.
I'm not that hungry today. This should be enough.
With his pockets bulging with stolen food, a Shu turned to leave. As he passed Lin Yi, he offered a sleazy, wide-mouthed grin.
Appreciate the meal, little brother Chu. See you tomorrow.
My name isn't Chu.
Oh, that's right. I believe you did mention that. Well, I'm off. Toodles!
Lin Yi watched him vanish out the door before turning back to the wooden tray. A Shu had taken everything of value, leaving behind only the pile of white insect eggs. Lin Yi watched the man's retreating back, his eyes narrowing as a plan formed. He leaned toward Chu Kai, his voice a ghost of a breath in the other man's ear. Without waiting for a response, Lin Yi turned and bolted from the room, his boots thudding against the uneven floorboards as he gave chase.
Hold on, wait up.
Lin Yi closed the distance, coming to a halt just a few paces behind the thief.
Something on your mind? Or are you just having second thoughts about letting me walk off with your dinner?
It's not about the food. I just wanted to know, how long has it been since you first arrived here?
Half a month, give or take. To be honest, I've lost track. Who has the energy to count days in a place like this? Not me, that's for sure.
Ashu shrugged, his entire demeanor suggesting a man who had long since abandoned the structure of the outside world.
I live for the now. One day follows another, and I just ride the wave. Dates and calendars, those are for people with futures.
And in all that time, have you noticed anything out of the ordinary? Anything strange?
At those words, Aishu's eyes seemed to glitter with a sudden, sharp interest. A wide, unsettling grin spread across his face.
Now that you mention it, there is one little detail. Word is, this whole place was built on top of an ancient imperial tomb. You know what that means, don't you? It's a graveyard! A massive forgotten pit for the dead!
He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a harsh, gravelly whisper that seemed to vibrate in the stagnant air.
You'd best keep one eye open when you sleep, kid! This place, it's crawling with ghosts!
He sounded like a man telling a campfire story, but Lin Yi couldn't shake the feeling that there was a jagged truth hidden beneath the performance.
Just pulling your leg! Don't look so terrified! See you around!
With a final, barking laugh, Ashu turned on his heel and disappeared into the shadows of the village street. Lin Yi stepped back into the relative safety of the cabin, his gaze immediately finding Chu Kai.
Well, what did you hear?
Chu Kai gave a slow, frustrated shake of his head.
Nothing. Not a single vibration. It was like you both just ceased to exist for a moment.
Lin Yi had intentionally closed the distance to verify if Ashu truly lacked a heartbeat, but the result was even more extreme than they expected. Chu Kai explained that the moment Lin Yi got close to the man, even Lin Yi's own heartbeat had vanished from his perception. They had been encased in a void of silence.
It's an isolation field. He can suppress all sound within a specific radius of himself.
Zhang Cheng rubbed his chin, his mind already piecing together the tactical advantages of such a power.
Think about it. A man who can move without sound can go anywhere, see anything, and never be caught. He isn't just a survivor, he's an expert at infiltration. Shu's presence here is no accident. He has a purpose, and it's likely as dangerous as everything else in this village.
But why the food? If he's so skilled, why act like a common thief? Why take everything but those eggs?
Chu Kai looked at the remaining egg fruits with visible revulsion, his appetite long since withered by the truth of their origin.
Maybe he knows what they are. Maybe he was just as sickened as we are and decided to take the only safe food for himself.
Lin Yi frowned, a memory flashing in his mind. He had watched Aishu swallow one of those eggs without a second thought. Disgust wasn't the motive. Movement caught his eye as the little girl flickered back into existence. She was holding a single piece of fruit, something she had kept hidden even from Aishu. Lin Yi stared at the fruit, then at the empty tray where the safe food had been. A new, far more unsettling suspicion began to take root.
What if he wasn't stealing from us? What if he was trying to prevent us from eating something that's even worse than those eggs?
Lin Yi's words left Chu Kai and Zhang Cheng completely floored. They couldn't wrap their heads around his sudden shift in perspective. Chu Kai in particular was struggling. He couldn't understand why Lin Yi would even consider trusting a complete unknown.
He's a total stranger to us. We have no idea who he is or what he wants. Why on earth would a guy like that risk his neck to save us?
Lin Yi didn't answer immediately. He just shook his head slowly, his expression unreadable as he reached into his pack. He pulled out a few items. Some canned goods Zhang Cheng had managed to scavenge back at Brother Lay's, and the dried rat jerky Chu Yun had prepared for them over the last few months. Selecting 2 pieces of food, Lin Yi turned his attention toward the young girl. He was careful not to move too fast. He didn't want to startle her into vanishing again.
Hey there, little sister. Would you be willing to trade that fruit in your hand for this food?
The girl was paralyzed with fear, unable to find her voice. She stole a quick, trembling glance at Lin Yi before burying her face and looking away. The little boy seemed more at ease with them now. He watched the food in Lin Yi's hand with interest, then leaned in to whisper something into the girl's ear. Reluctantly, the girl handed her fruit to the boy. He stepped forward, swapping the strange fruit for the items Lin Yi was offering. With the trade complete, Lin Yi stepped back and returned to Chu Kai and Zhang Cheng, holding the fruit he'd just acquired.
What was the point of that? We already have plenty of our own fruit. We don't need whatever they're eating. Besides, shouldn't we be extra cautious about eating anything from this place? Our own supplies are much safer than some random fruit from a stranger.
I have no intention of eating this.
He glanced back at the 2 children to make sure they weren't listening, then pulled Zhang Cheng and Chu Kai deeper into the corner of the cabin. Without another word, Lin Yi raised the fruit high and slammed it down with everything he had. A wave of cloying, floral sweetness filled the air, but the scent was immediately overshadowed by movement. Tiny black shapes, no bigger than sesame seeds, began to scramble out from the ruins of the fruit. Chu Kai didn't hesitate. His foot came down like a hammer, crushing the scurrying specks before they could reach the shadows. Lin Yi followed suit, his boots stomping rhythmically. Zhang Cheng, however, froze as he realized what those tiny dots actually were. He let out a strangled gasp and scrambled backward, his back hitting the timber wall.
Spiders?
Zhang Cheng hissed, his voice trembling with a visceral primal dread. Even when they were being hunted by the skin-wearing monsters, he had never looked this broken. This wasn't tactical concern. This was a deep-seated phobia.
They're just bugs, Zhang Cheng. What's the big deal? They're tiny.
What the hell do you know? Spiders are the single most terrifying thing on this entire godforsaken planet.
Lin Yi paused, caught off guard by the sheer intensity of Zhang Cheng's reaction. The fearless genius was actually petrified of a few tiny spiders. Despite the situation, a small chuckle escaped him.
Don't you dare laugh! Just kill them! Kill every last one of them! Thank the gods we didn't eat those. Can you imagine? Taking a bite and feeling 100 of those things, crawling around in your mouth, sliding down your throat?
The horrific image seemed to play out behind his eyes, leaving him looking physically ill as he watched the floor for any remaining survivors.
So there were some bugs in the fruit. It's not exactly a monster attack. We just won't eat that kind next time.
Despite his casual tone, Chu Kai was internally rattled. He knew how close those things had come to escaping into the corners of the room. If he hadn't spent the last 2 months honing his reflexes and supernatural vision, they would have vanished in a heartbeat.
But still, finding 1 or 2 is normal. This was a whole swarm.
That's because you've never seen an egg sac. One sac can hold hundreds of those little nightmares. They all hatch at once. Just the thought of it is enough to make my skin crawl for a lifetime.
Think about A. Shu. He took the fruit and the mushrooms from our tray the moment he got here. Do you think he was trying to stop us from eating these spiders?
Wait, you mean all the food they're serving us is infested with these things?
Maybe not everything, but definitely those. And probably not these.
He gestured toward the egg fruits, the strange, translucent spheres they had initially found so repulsive. Ironically, the items that looked the most like massive insect eggs seemed to be the only ones that were actually clean. The more Lin Yi thought about it, the more Ashu's actions stood out as bizarre. If the man had been truly starving, he could have just asked any of the hospitable villagers for a meal. Instead, He had specifically targeted the food given to Lin Yi's group, but he didn't take everything. He had been very selective. He had left the egg fruits behind, the very things that looked the most like literal insect eggs. If he found them disgusting, he wouldn't have eaten one right in front of them earlier. It was as if he were sending a message. Only the unsettling spheres were safe. Everything else, the normal-looking fruit, the mushrooms, was tainted. Lin Yi remembered Ashu's warning that this place was haunted. Was that just another cryptic way of saying the entire environment was infested?
So what? You're saying Ashu is actually some kind of guardian angel?
Not necessarily. Don't mistake a warning for altruism. He might just want us gone because our presence is a variable he can't control. Let's not forget, that guy's reasons for being in this village are far from pure. He's looking for something or someone. We're just in the way.
There was no longer any room for doubt. Between the lack of heartbeats and the spiders in the fruit, Lin Yi and his friends were certain that this sanctuary was anything but safe. The conversation inevitably turned to their next move. Should they pack their things and leave immediately, or stay and risk whatever this village was hiding?
I say we get out now. Every minute we stay here is another minute we're vulnerable. I'd rather take my chances in the forest than wait for these people to feed us more parasites.
And go where? The world outside is still crawling with monsters? We're trapped between a rock and a hard place, Chukai. If we're going to be in danger either way, we might as well stay and gather some actual intelligence. Knowing what we're up against here might be the only thing that saves us when we face whatever's coming next.
Lin Yi had initially sided with Zhang Cheng's logic, but a seed of doubt had taken root in his mind. He found himself hesitating, his gaze fixed on the shattered remains of the fruit on the floor. It wasn't that he lacked the will to continue. It was the sheer, insidious nature of those spiders. They were so small, no bigger than sesame seeds. A person could swallow a dozen in a single bite and never even realize it. If Ashu hadn't intervened, they would have followed their instincts, avoided the bizarre egg fruits, and gorged themselves on the normal food. By now, those parasites would already be inside them. He looked at the villagers outside the cabin. They had lived here for years, eating this food every day. Their bodies were likely crawling with them, living, breathing incubators for whatever these things were. As the spiders grew, they would surely begin to consume the host from the inside out, turning human organs into nutrients until the body became nothing more than a hollowed-out cocoon, a nursery for the next generation of giants. Lin Yi's gaze drifted back to the tray. The egg fruits. Were these actually the eggs laid by the mature spiders? If the creatures grew to be human-sized, a palm-sized egg wasn't just possible, it was logical. But why were they empty? Were they just in an early stage of development? Or was the nutritional liquid inside meant to nourish the host before the parasites took over? The more he thought about it, the more the cabin felt like a trap. If they stayed, how long would it be before they were forced to eat? How long before they too became part of the life cycle? Lin Yi opened his mouth to share his disturbing theory with the others, his expression grave. Before he could utter a word, Chukai's head snapped toward the small cabin window, his brow furrowed in a deep, concentrated frown.
Quiet. Chu Lai is coming.
Chu Lai's abrupt return sent a jolt of alarm through the group. None of them had expected him back this quickly.
How on earth did he make it back so fast?
Lin Yi peered out toward the distance. Chu Lai was approaching with heavy, deliberate strides, his expression frozen in a mask of cold displeasure.
I thought he was off to visit his mother?
Zhang Cheng's voice was hushed, filled with suspicion. He wondered if Chu Lai had some supernatural link to the spiders they just killed. Did he feel it the moment they were crushed?
Quick, get this mess off the floor.
Lin Yi scrambled to gather the mangled fruit. If Chu Lai discovered they'd rejected the offering or found the vermin hidden inside, their situation would spiral out of control. Chu Kai didn't want to touch the remains. Instead, he ground the crushed spiders into the floorboards with his heel, twisting his foot until the evidence was nearly invisible.
Look at that face! He's definitely not here for a social call.
Zhang Cheng whispered as Chu Lai reached the cabin. When he stepped through the door, the warmth he'd shown earlier had vanished entirely. His gaze swept over them, finally locking onto Lin Yi. Lin Yi tensed. An oppressive weight radiated from the man, heavy enough that even the two children in the corner seemed to shrink back. In Chu Lai's eyes, there was something worse than anger. Pure hostility.
Brother, you're back sooner than I thought.
Lin Yi tried to break the silence. He gestured vaguely toward the table.
The villagers brought some food. I wanted to wait for you, but I was so hungry I couldn't help but start without you.
Chu Lai barely glanced at the tray. He didn't seem to care about the food at all. His voice was low, vibrating with a strange intensity.
Come with me.
He ground his teeth together, forcing the next words out as if they were a burden.
Mother wants to see you.
A cold wave of dread washed over Lin Yi. On the surface, the request seemed normal, an adopted son introducing his long-lost brother to his mother. But Mother wasn't human. He remembered Chu Lai's possessiveness.
She's my mother.
The territorial claim had been clear from the start. This meeting was obviously against Chu Lai's wishes, fueling his barely suppressed rage.
She wants to see me? May I ask why, brother?
There is no why. This is Mother's will. You will do it, or Mother will be unhappy.
Lin Yi maintained a neutral mask, but internally he was reeling. The man's blind devotion was unsettling. Had Mother cast some kind of spell on him, or was he just that far gone?
We're guests here. It's only polite to pay our respects.
Zhang Cheng spoke up, his curiosity overriding his caution. He wanted to see this mysterious woman for himself, the source of all the village's oddities.
You stay here. Mother only asked for Lin Yi.
Lin Yi's heart sank. If Chu Kai couldn't come, he'd be stripped of his borrowed abilities. He was heading into the lion's den alone. Despite the risk, he knew he couldn't refuse. They needed information, and souring their relationship with Chu Lai now would be fatal. He thought back to his training with Ru Hua. He had to be ready for anything. As Lin Yi prepared to leave, Zhang Cheng discreetly slipped 2 wooden vials into his bag. One held dried vine powder from Ru Hua, the other water infused with potent stainers. Insurance, just in case. Lin Yi stepped out with Chu Lai, leaving his companions behind. But as soon as they were gone, Chu Kai activated his senses and signaled Zhang Cheng to follow from the shadows.
I suspect your mother just wants to meet someone who shares her child's face, brother.
Lin Yi kept his voice calm as he spoke to Chu Lai's broad back, carefully choosing his words.
It's a testament to how deeply she cares for you.
Lin Yi was navigating a minefield. He didn't know if Chu Lai was a god-chosen or what kind of monstrosities lurked in this village. If Chu Lai's insecurities got in the way of their escape, they were doomed. He had to make it clear he wasn't a threat to the man's position.
Seeing you so settled and happy after all these years puts my mind at ease. I'm doing well too, in my own way. I have loyal companions who look out for me. Having them by my side is enough for me.
Chu Lai's frame visibly stiffened at the words. He stopped in his tracks, turning slowly. The hostility that had clouded his eyes began to dissipate, replaced by a confused sort of wonder.
You don't want a mother?
Lin Yi gave a firm shake of his head. The very word mother brought back chilling memories of the freaks who had raised him. He had zero interest in bestowing that title upon a total stranger. Even if they were blood, he wouldn't want it.
I see.
A thin smile touched Chu Lai's lips, though it lacked the genuine warmth from before. He seemed relieved by Lin Yi's rejection, but a flicker of doubt remained. He wasn't sure if his mother felt the same way. Lin Yi watched the shifts in the other man's expression with growing distaste. The guy was clearly unstable. His psychological attachment to his mother was beyond unsettling. It was pathological. Worse still was the face. Seeing his own features twisted into those strange, needy expressions made Lin Yi's skin crawl. It felt like watching a hulking brute squeezed into a child's sailor suit, winking and blowing kisses in a high-pitched, mocking voice. He had assumed the woman lived in one of the wooden shacks like the rest of the villagers, but as they walked, the path began to lead away from the cluster of houses. To Lin Yi's surprise, Chu Lai didn't lead him to another cabin. Instead, they arrived at the dark, yawning entrance of a tunnel. As they ventured deeper into the stone passage, the evidence of Ashu's theory became undeniable. The architecture, the sheer scale of the carvings, this place was surely an ancient imperial tomb. But the historical weight of the tomb was instantly eclipsed by the figure waiting at the end of the hall. Lin Yi's breath hitched in his throat. Standing there, shrouded in shadow, was Chu Lai's mother.